What is up, everybody? This is Cedric, and we're back with more Black Ops 6 multiplayer. In the previous video, I was talking about blueprints. It's a little interesting topic there. I know some people feel a certain way about blueprints existing in the game, and even operator skins. I know that that's usually the more problematic topic in the community, but at the end of the day, they come together usually in the bundles, but that's not what I want to talk about. I don't want to dwell too much on that other topic, but if you're watching this and you enjoy this type of videos, please consider leaving a like. I do appreciate the support. And if you haven't, also subscribe. It's basically free and does really help the channel. Today I wanted to talk about something that I mentioned in the, if you haven't watched that, then it makes sense. It makes sense that you're here. It's the DLSS or frame generation. It's technically the same thing, but there's different there are different generations basically of the same technology. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I know that a lot of people don't like it, and I know a lot of people do like it because it does help you with performance, and it's a great tool in that case, or in that way, because if you have a graphics card that does support the frame generation or DLSS, FSR, if I'm not mistaken, that's the AMD option, then you'll get a lot more out of your PC, and it could even give you a few years extra for the, it could give you a few years extra. It could give you a few years extra of use for your PC. I know that for console it's a different thing, but because most games are usually optimized first for consoles like Xbox and PlayStation, and in some cases even the Switch, but it's usually more on either PlayStation first and then everything else, or Xbox first and then everything else. If you're a PC user like me, you may have a certain opinion about DLSS. I know that some people really don't like it and other people do like it, and I know how some people feel about people that either don't really have an opinion or don't want to have an opinion. But you can consider me that, because I don't really care for DLSS. Like, I don't mind that it's there, and I do use it every now and then. In a way, I guess I lean more towards I like it other than I don't. But what I wanted to specifically discuss here is I find it very interesting that people don't like it. I understand that in some games it's basically mandatory to use it. I know that it's mandatory to use it in some games. Like, it doesn't always give you the option, or every game doesn't always give you the option to disable it, and that I don't agree with that. You should be able to either use it or not if you don't want to, or if you want to. But I know that a lot of people make a big deal out of it. Even if you don't want to use it, people do complain a lot about its existence. And to be honest, to me, it doesn't really make all that much sense, because if the game does give you the option to not use it and disable it, then what's the point of complaining, right? Now, if the game makes you use it and there's no option to disable it, then that's a completely different story. I understand that you don't want to use. I would understand that you don't want to use it if you're playing a competitive game, like let's say you're playing a online game like Black Ops or any Call of Duty, or if you're playing CS:GO or CS2 now, or if you're playing Valorant, or any game that requires you to have reaction time that's really fast, and that you need a PC that's gonna give you the information as fast as it can. Like, I can understand that you don't want it to be mandatory in those cases, and that you won't want to use it because you want to have that quick update. But when you're playing offline games, like let's say Alan Wake 2, or you're playing, I don't know, the campaign of Black Ops or any Call of Duty, or you're playing any type of game that doesn't require you to have a fast response time, if you don't really notice it, to me it's not that big of a deal, because you don't really notice it. And in some cases, to be honest, it doesn't even feel as useful. I feel like it's still pretty early. I feel like it's pretty much in its early stages. Like, it's still not as useful as it could possibly be. But I don't feel like, in some games, I feel like it doesn't do anything really to the game. Like, it doesn't add anything and it doesn't remove from it. Like, it feels, oh crap, like it feels, that was weird. It feels like it's not either helping the game or it's not really affecting it either. So to me, in some cases, I can see why some people could complain, but complaining just doesn't make any sense either to me in those cases where it doesn't make that much of a difference. But then it does make you question, should it be there in the first place? Because If you don't really notice it, then what's the point of having it, right? It's the same thing with ray tracing. Ray tracing is another thing that one I wouldn't say that I hate ray tracing, but in some cases, to be honest, especially when you're kind of blind like me, you don't really notice that much of a difference from real-time ray tracing to just static reflections and lighting. So I don't understand why a lot of people complain. A lot of people want to have raw performance from the game and have ray tracing made or built into the game itself so that it doesn't require as much. Now, when it's not well optimized, then it makes sense, right? It makes sense to not want to have it, to want to have it built into the engine itself. But it is one of those things that I if it didn't exist, I wouldn't really care. And that it does exist, I feel like it's not really worth it at times to spend a lot of money to have something that's gonna help you have ray tracing, because sometimes it doesn't even look that great, or sometimes it bugs out and it makes the lighting look kind of weird in certain games. Ray tracing is also another thing that does make me wonder why. I mean, it's also in its early stages. I know it's been out for a couple of years now, but it's still not where people want it to be. And if it didn't exist, to be honest, I wouldn't really notice. And because sometimes I have it on and I think it's off. But again, you could say it's basically my fault for thinking that it's there or not there, because I don't really notice the difference, or maybe I'm not as tech savvy to understand why it's not there, or why it's there, or what it looks like and what it should look like. But I don't know, man. I feel like it could, a lot of the resources that a lot of developers are investing into ray tracing, even on the console development, I feel like they're putting a lot of time into it when it doesn't really add all that much. Like, I understand in certain details in the game that you may be playing, you can notice it and it makes you feel a little more immersed, but in other cases you don't really notice it. Like, for example, if I'm playing here, right, and I'm looking this way, and back there in the game or in the map, put in time to have ray tracing, and I'm hardly ever gonna really pay attention to it. It doesn't really make all that much sense to me to have it. Developers are spending a lot of time, even putting more time than they should be putting in, to have it be there. I could change my mind about it if I really noticed all that much of a difference. Sometimes I even have to look at videos people make to really understand the difference. To really see the difference between ray tracing being on and ray tracing being off, because if not, I wouldn't really know. Even if I turn it on and off myself, I wouldn't really know what to look at, and maybe that's the problem, and that's why I feel like it's unnecessary to even have it on. Like, I've played quite a few games where I turn it on just because I can, and not because I want to, like, I notice that much of a difference. And that may come just from my from me not really understanding it and what it does. Again, if that's the case, if people don't really notice it, especially average consumers, if they don't really notice the difference, then what's the point of having it? Because you're wasting so many resources having teams specifically work on them to have, like, I don't know, say even 25% of your, no, I would say 25% would be understandable, but let's say you're having 50% of the people consuming your game or playing your game not see the difference, then at that point it's only the return on the investment that you're getting is not really there. Now, if it does make you get more sales, it makes sense to work on it and have a team specifically putting time into it and developing newer technology or existing technology for it. Maybe that's just me. I don't know how you feel about it. I don't know if you do like ray tracing, if you do notice the difference. Maybe I'm just dumb. Now, I'm open to your comments about it. If you help me understand it better, maybe I can say, you know what? Now I see it. Now I can see why people like having ray tracing on and why people vouch for it. But if the only reason is it looks pretty, then in those cases, I just don't see why it would be there when you could most likely work. I guess I'm not really sure also how much of time consumption it represents for a development team. Like, if ray tracing consumes more resources, and by resources I mean developers working on it, then it doesn't make sense to have it, right? If it's better to just work on like static lighting and reflections, then that's probably a better choice. But if it consumes the same amount of time, then it makes sense for it to be more realistic and have a team specifically working on it. But I do want to create this sort of conversation about ray tracing and DLSS. Like, I would like to know why people don't like it. I know that at least for DLSS, it does create a lot of ghosting. But when you're not really paying attention to the ghosting that it creates, like if it's creating ghosting for specific objects in the environment that you don't really pay attention to, then I don't see why it's such a big deal for some people to have that ghosting and hate DLSS. Just like some people could say, then why do you not like ray tracing? But it's sort of the same thing. Like, for if DLSS doesn't really make that much of a difference with the ghosting that it creates, and ray tracing doesn't make that much of a difference, then DLSS giving you better performance, then it makes sense, even because you don't notice what it's doing, right? With the newer especially with the newer technology that they've made and created for DLSS. And for ray tracing, it usually affects your performance, and sometimes you can't even tell the difference. So what's the point of having it? That's where I stand with those two. I don't know what you think. I would like to know. Let me know in the comments. If you do happen to like this video, please consider leaving a like. Also, subscribe if you haven't. It does help out the channel a lot. Thank you for your time. I do appreciate you watching this video. If you've made it this far, have a nice day. Take care of yourself. Drink some water. Tell your mom you love her. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.